Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Emily, and I will be moderating this panel today on why the multi-chain is the future of blockchain. I am joined here with Derek, the founder of Moonbeam, a blockchain which we call a parachain on Polkadot. We have Ingo, the founder of KILT, which is a parachain on Kusama, Polkadot's Canary network. And we have Oscar here, who is the CLO and CFO of Engine, which is the company behind Efinity, a parachain on Polkadot. Before we begin, I thought we could take a moment and have each one of you introduce your projects and what you guys are building. If we could start with you, Derek.
Sure. Moonbeam is a smart contract platform that's been optimized for multi-chain and cross-chain use cases. And so I think it's pretty relevant to the topic here on the panel. My belief is that this is going to be driving a lot of change in the next 12 to 24 months as people adapt to the new multi-chain and cross-chain technologies that are available.
And Ingo, what about you?
So yeah, KILT protocol basically supplies decentralized digital identity, which is, when you think about it, a fundamental building block of the Web3, because Web3 is something like where you can own things, and when you own things, then it's also interesting actually who owns the thing, and it's also very interesting what is the thing. So identity becomes a very, very interesting building block here. And yeah, this is what we're building, and as you already said, we are also part of the Polkadot family. We also run a parachain, and yeah, over to you.
So I'm Oscar, I'm from Efinity. Basically, we want to be the Moonbeam and the KILT for NFTs and the metaverse on Polkadot. We're also planning to be a building block. We plan to be the infrastructure of the metaverse. So maybe smart contracts and digital identity are very abstract, but the metaverse, I think, is not. Right? In the near future, especially on Polkadot, we're going to see the next layer of the internet. Instead of staring at screens, we're going to have a very immersive experience. We're going to have holograms popping out of our phones. And the key part of that is it has to be built on blockchain, right? We have to have true ownership of digital assets, and these are going to move around what we're going to call the open and decentralized metaverse. And when these holograms are popping out, when these non-fungible tokens are flying around by the thousands, we need a superhighway, we need infrastructure for that. It has to be interoperable, customizable, shared security. It has to be built on Polkadot. We're building that on Efinity. The team is the team that launched Engine Coin, one of the original metaverse NFT tokens from 2017. Our CTO, Vitek Radomski, authored the ERC-1155 protocol for Ethereum NFTs. And so we're trying to translate that track record to launch the first NFT parachain on Polkadot.
Excellent. Thank you, Oscar, and thank you all three. Now, before we dive into multi-chain, I wanted to talk a little bit about cross-chain interoperability and specialization and what is enabled in a cross-chain universe, so to speak. So this concept of specialized chains like Moonbeam, which is a smart contract platform, or KILT, which is an identity platform, or Engine, which is a metaverse and NFT platform, being specialized chains and not having to do it all, because within interoperability, they can tap into the other one's benefits by being in a shared network and interoperating with one another. So, and not only can you get these benefits from the other chains, but even how this can help scale a system by spreading workloads across multiple chains. So I wanted to take a moment and have each of you guys talk about how interoperability and cross-chain interoperability is playing a role in what you guys are building. And we'll just go the same way, Derek, and begin with you.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of the key points. I think that historically and even to date, blockchains are these insular things, right? You have a blockchain, it doesn't really connect to anything outside of it, so you have to create your own little world. I think of it, I use the analogy sometimes of these early economies, right? You think of an economy from a long time ago, you had to make everything locally, right? You had to make, any like clothing or any goods, were kind of locally made. And I think the moment where we're in now is that, these economies are connecting to each other, so you start to see this evolution where a given chain can specialize in doing something. It can be really good at making one particular good or service. and maybe they can get the things that they're not so good at from other chains, right? So you start to get this kind of efficiency through connecting these different economies together. But we're kind of at the very beginning of this, and I think it requires a different infrastructural approach. It requires a different style of thinking when you're a developer building applications to build apps that can take advantage of this.
Yeah, maybe adding to that, so when you look a little bit in the past, like 2015 or so, when we were starting with the blockchains where you could actually compute on, there was always this vision of a world computer, right? So there was one world computer which was the blockchain, and it was basically there for solving all the problems in the world, and then it turned out that this world computer is pretty slow, and that actually there's a lot of congestion happening in this world computer because everybody wants to use it, and then it gets more and more expensive. And this is one of the fundamental ideas behind Polkadot to change that. And the idea of how to change it is that you take a lot of brilliant teams around the world, and they all build their own special use case blockchain, basically. So we are, like we do identity, and you do. Where was I? So, and when you have this, then you basically can use each other to become more efficient and to be actually also faster. Because, like from my point of view, so we worked on this identity thing now for 4.5 years. So if you want to have this power of an identity chain inside your chain, then you would have to work for another 4.5 years, and you won't be fast enough, right? So you can, inside our ecosystem, you can just utilize each other and be much faster with cross-chain interactions. And I think that is one of the great powers, because when I have a blockchain which is only here for identity, that makes it much better, because there will not be any congestions in there. You can't have a smart contract on KILT. That's impossible. You can just do the identity thing there. So it's a purpose chain. And when you have tons of purpose chains and they're all connecting with each other, then you actually get what is the world computer. But it's not one computer. It's hundreds of computers which work together. And that's the idea.
So for us, same idea. Like Derek said, we don't want these small countries, small economies that don't talk to each other. And probably for NFT and metaverse, it's easy to explain. Like, I love my iPhone, but sometimes I send a picture to a friend and they say, hey, it's HEIC, my phone can't read it, right? So when you move across the metaverses, we want to own our digital items. My avatar wants to own its own jacket, own pair of shoes. You just want to make sure that as you move from chain to chain, from metaverse to metaverse, that you can take your jacket, your shoes, all these digital items with you. They can be read by the next metaverse. They're all interoperable. Something as simple as having a blockchain wallet that can show the NFTs from different chains. Therefore, it's technologically possible for each chain to read them. That alone will make the metaverse possible. And then we can plug in KILT and Moonbeam and all be really great.
Yes, it will all be really great. So let's take it one step further now that we've talked about cross-chain interoperability and dive into the multi-chain. So not just interacting amongst each other within a shared network, but also going to other networks with bridges and operating with those chains with smart contracts on Ethereum and so on. So I thought we could each go down and talk about, I know all of you guys have use cases for the multi-chain world. If we could start with you, Derek.
Sure. So, I mean, this topic of cross-chain interoperability is the hot topic now, and so there's a lot of different teams pursuing different kinds of interoperability approaches, protocols. There are a lot of bridges these days. I think we're at a moment now where the market is getting educated that not all of these bridges are the same. They make different kinds of assumptions. They have different safety and security properties, and so. From our point of view, given the goal of our project to create this interoperable smart contracts platform, that was one of the original motivations for going down the path to build on Polkadot, was that engineered into the system itself is this cross-chain connectivity. So that's kind of the gold standard, I'd say, is the XCM technology that powers Polkadot. But there are many chains out there, so you do need to connect to the other chains as well. And that's where I'm seeing actually some pretty interesting approaches there. having to do with these general message passing systems, right? So you can pass messages with the Polkadot technology XCM, and now there are some other approaches to be able to send those messages even to other chains like Ethereum mainnet and Avalanche, other destinations. And so I do think that those are all tools that developers need to build apps that can address all the users and assets and different kinds of use cases that they want to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And really quick there before we move on, because you and I talked a little bit offline about this. Now with the multi-chain approach standard, and you just tapped on it there, you are seeing developers building applications in different ways now that this functionality is being enabled. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So again, I think that right now it's mostly these cross-chain technologies are just coming to market now, right? I mean, Polkadot's XCM just went live this month. But I think that the key challenge in my mind is it's the mental model, right? So everyone's been operating under this mental model of, there's a chain, I need to bridge stuff to it, and then I work with it there, and then I bridge something somewhere else. So this is kind of the mental model that not only developers have, but users have. And so I think that's the big shift that I'm starting to see happen, where people are understanding, hey, I can have an app that's multi-chain, but I don't need to have users bridge around, right? I can just send messages around to coordinate actions on different chains. And so I think that's, we're starting to see development teams. We have a solid backlog of teams now that are shipping products using XCM and other features like this in the second half of the year. But it is brand new technology that's just come out, just now in the last few months.
Yeah, excellent. And we will be diving into XCM in our next question. But first, Ingo and Oscar, I wanted to ask you guys about the multi-chain use cases that are relevant for identity and metaverse and NFTs.
So I think for identity is pretty straightforward. Digital identity has always a core. We call it DID, or not only we call it the DID, it's called a DID. It's a decentralized identifier. And this is something which you can compare maybe with your face or your fingerprint or your signature. So this is something which you make on your computer and which identifies you clearly and where you have the full control of. So you say what you want to share, what you want to sign, and so on. So if you implement this on a blockchain, then of course it is needed by many other blockchains inside the ecosystem and outside the ecosystem. And when we look inside the ecosystem, this is very easy because we all know each other and we have conferences and we meet each other and we are like-minded in a way because we all want to build this thing here together. And so that is easy. But when it comes to outside the Polkadot world, then it becomes really, really interesting. And I think this is where you were thinking of with the bridges. So we don't only have to bridge between our own systems, which is just going on. You just have to wait until it's happening now, right? But bridging to Ethereum, bridging to Bitcoin, bridging to Solana, bridging to all the other guys. This is actually the interesting part, because if you have not known about you guys and still you have your NFT on Ethereum, which happens sometimes, then people just don't understand why they can't have their identity also and use the KILT identity there. So I think this is, so we are right now at the first step. So the cross-chain interoperability between all us guys in the Polkadot ecosystem. This is now possible and feasible, and it's just going to happen. But we have to, as the next step, we have to think outside and bridge to the others, because the consumer in the end doesn't really care about when you walk down the street here in Davos, you see there's hundreds of blockchain projects apparently outside, and they all do great things, right? And we shouldn't be like, yeah, we do our own thing here and we are going to rule the world. This is probably not going to happen. We have to coexist with the guys, and this is why we have to build bridges to those as well.
Sorry, pause. Wait, we're not going to rule the world? Anyway, no. Well,
in a way.
All right, we'll be discreet about it. No, just let me take this opportunity to plug some friends who are not here, right? Like one of the most active chains in the Polkadot ecosystem is Akala, and they're building out their AUSD ecosystem. So we're an NFT chain, right? We don't know anything about finance, payments. I hear there's a lot of regulation associated with that stuff, right? So just focusing on it will take a lot of effort. But we can plug in to Akala, get their AUSD flowing throughout the Polkadot ecosystem, and that takes care of one of the most important use cases. Because if you want the NFT NFT ecosystem, if you want the metaverse to thrive, then you have to empower content creators, right? There's an economic side to the metaverse, and creators have to be able to create in a sustainable way. So if they can make payments, people can trade NFTs, people can pay content creators, support them with, let's say, AUSD that can flow across parachains without us having to worry about it, just have to plug into Akala. Then our NFTs can flow onto the other parachains. The digital identity and smart contract use cases can flow to the other parachains. We can take care of developing our own thing, which we know very well. We can tap into what the other people are developing, which they know very well, and then I'm sure we can rule the world at some point.
Excellent. That's phase 2, right, Oscar?
Yeah, hail Hydra.
Excellent. Now, in order to really truly realize the full potential of a multi-chain world, blockchains need to be able to communicate with one another, and not only just chains within an individual network like Polkadot, but also other networks like all of you guys touched on with Ethereum and other networks that you guys know, Bitcoin. Polkadot has a solution to this with XCM. XCM stands for cross-consensus message, and it doesn't only enable the ability for chains to send what we call arbitrary messages or messages between chains, text messages, so to speak, but it also allows you to do a lot of other specialized things, like you can request specific operations to occur on another chain or network, like a Ethereum smart contract. And this request could be things like a remote transfer, teleporting assets, or even an interaction with a smart contract on Bitcoin. So knowing all 3 of your projects personally, I know that all of you guys have use cases with XCM and the ability to not only send assets, but also NFTs and funds and messages between chains. And I thought you guys could each discuss some of your use cases. And we'll start in the reverse order with you, Oscar.
Oh, great. I'm not ready. So maybe let me pick up on something that Derek said, right? The security aspect of this cross-chain messaging, right? One of the great things about the architecture of Polkadot is that is the shared security. It's all within the same system. The parachains are all secured together, right? So Derek mentioned bridges. So one thing about bridges, which we've seen in recent times, is that you can have a great blockchain, you can devote a lot of resources to securing it, but then you realize that you need a bridge outside that blockchain. It needs to connect to the other ecosystems, and sometimes you have a problem because you might have put all these resources into securing the blockchain itself, but you might have forgotten that you need to also secure the bridge, and you might have put less resources there. I don't know, maybe it had 7 validators, and then next thing you know, there's a hack worth, say, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's important because we're building some very important things, but they're very abstract and high level. If you say smart contracts, extremely important, but very abstract to the normal person. Digital identity, very abstract, just not visible to the normal person. XCMP, you can watch a few Gavin Wood videos, but the normal person, it's very abstract to that person. But if you take something like an NFT game, it's very vivid, and if once they see news of hacks or things that are not secure, bridges failing, then that undermines confidence, and people will just not want to try it. And we think that NFTs and the metaverse are important because it's a portal for people to go mainstream. And to have that confidence in the shared security is a very great thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Oscar. And Ingo, how about you?
Actually, I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that because that is such an important point. That's really one of the key things which I think are solved by Polkadot and which haven't been solved by many other projects out there. Because bridges between, say, when you have blockchain A and blockchain B, and they want to communicate, you want to send a message from here, and you want something to happen on the other blockchain. Well, you can fire anything. You don't know if it happened, right? right? So, so you need something in between which actually checks that it is also really happening on the other side of the chain. So if I send funds here from there, I actually want to know if they arrived there, right? And then you have a whole lot of problems, different address formats, different types of identity here and there, different block times, and all that. So this is really a mess. And these messes we normally try to solve with bridges. And we have seen in the past bridges which don't even have any validator, which are just centralized applications. And this is pretty crazy, actually. When you have a really, really secure system here, a blockchain, and a really, really secure system here, a blockchain, and then you connect it with a central system, this is not such a good idea. And what Polkadot actually brought into the world is a mechanism that this bridge can actually be secured by the Polkadot blockchain. And this is the power of the whole concept. So this is the building block that we now have just for a couple of weeks now, where we can start building cross-chain interactions which are totally secure because they are secured by the Polkadot blockchain. This is really, really valuable.
I'll offer a couple of use cases. We have a bunch in progress, but there's a couple of shipped use cases that you wouldn't be surprised to learn that the use case that was most in demand first was a token movement use case. So there's a reason why bridges designed for token movement were the first use cases that have come into being in general. Using XCM, obviously, it has these great security properties that Oscar mentioned, and Ingo. So we have that as a shipped product called XC20. So XC20s, they look like ERC20s, which is standard format that a lot of developers are used to using with. So when these XC20s live on Moonbeam, they look and behave and they act the same way an ERC20 does, but they have this unique property where they can be moved around at high security to any other parachain within the Polkadot ecosystem. So it has these extra qualities with it. We already have quite a bit of uptake on that feature. I think for a lot of project teams, they say, great, I can deploy an application to Moonbeam, but then I have access to all of the assets that are on any of the parachains within the Polkadot ecosystem. So that's a great advantage. Second use case that was quick to ship is more in the DeFi sector. So this is more a liquid staking derivative product. The interesting thing about that, so we're working with a team called Lido, which is fairly prominent in this area. But so the interesting thing about the architecture of their solution is that they were very familiar with using the Ethereum development, the tools and the developer tools and tech stack. So they deployed a dApp, a Lido dApp that end users would interact with on Moonbeam. But using XCM, they're remote controlling staking functions on the relay chain, which is the main, kind of the master chain of Polkadot, where staking happens. It's very specialized for staking functionality. And so even though it's a pretty simple example, this is the kind of idea I think we're going to see a lot more of, where you have a single application, a single user experience back to the user, but behind the scenes, there's actually two different specialized blockchains that are at work servicing that user. And then the user, a key point here I'd also say is the user isn't necessarily aware that they're interacting with two different blockchains here, right? It's just kind of one experience back to the user. So I think that's quite important because if you don't have that secure messaging and the user kind of is exposed to all the blockchains they're interacting with, then the user experience is going to get worse, actually. So this is I think that's a sign of things to come, right? This kind of simplification of the user experience, hiding complexity behind the scenes, but having that back end consist of many specialized blockchains.
Yeah, absolutely. And now when you think about a multi-chain world and chains communicating with other networks and amongst each other and collaborating in an interoperable environment, it goes without saying that security is a must, right? Especially when you talk about transferring assets or funds, right? As a company, you would not want to do that in an insecure environment. Polkadot is the only blockchain that is solving this security problem that all blockchains face, especially when you talk about what Derek's saying, being on one blockchain and going to another blockchain that has different security standards. And Polkadot is solving that with what we call shared security. And on a high level, shared security is just all parachains, blockchains that are connected to Polkadot benefit from the economic security that is provided by Polkadot's relay chain validators. That is a lot, but all you need to know is that by being on Polkadot, you are secure. all panelists here have cross-chain collaborations with not only, as we've heard, inside the Polkadot network, but also with other networks that are not within the Polkadot ecosystem. And I thought you guys could talk about security, and even Oscar, you mentioned hacks and things that can happen in insecure environments. Feel free to go wherever you want with this, but how important is security to your chains? And Ingo, I think you'll go first.
So, yeah, so when you're building something around the blockchain space, basically you have to make a decision first. Okay, is this rather a smart contract or is this rather a chain, right? So if you're building something like a smart contract on the Moonbeam platform or on the Ethereum platform, then you basically use the security of the underlying chain for securing your application in a way. So this is an easy choice if you want to do something which is, well, just an application also. If you think more broad, like you need your own platform for smart contracts, or you need your own platform for identity, which is usable by everyone, your choice is probably, I want to build a blockchain. So when you want to build a blockchain, you need some kind of a framework for building a blockchain first, and then, of course, you have to, when this thing goes live, you have to somehow secure it, right? You see the huge blockchains out there, like Bitcoin being really secure because of all the economic power behind that, and Polkadot is one of those. And if I start as KILT, a small blockchain with just a couple of thousand followers maybe, and maybe only 20 validators or so, that's not pretty secure because it's not, the economic value is just not there from the beginning. It may grow after a while, but it's not there in the beginning. And what you deliver then is a totally insecure blockchain because it could be taken over by anyone who has enough money for that. And so what do you do there? And this is where this is one of the things which actually brought us into the Polkadot ecosystem, because you can, if you build a parachain, or so, which is a blockchain inside the Polkadot ecosystem, you can benefit from the security of the network. How does that work? So you build your own block, and then you send your block basically to the Polkadot blockchain where it gets checked and basically stamped and sent back. And so all the economic value of the Polkadot blockchain actually stands behind the truth that we produce with our blockchain. And this is very, very valuable because you start from scratch and you already are part of this big thing. So this is where security was a major thing for us to come in here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Derek, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with all those points. I think for me, though, what you realize, I think of these messages first, this cross-chain interoperability we talked about. I think the need for shared security follows from creating a system that's going to work for interoperability. So, I mean, I see it kind of as it's almost a necessary element, like in the design of a system that's designed to be able to interact between chains, without making additional assumptions. But it does have this bootstrapping effect. I think that is a very important point. That is something where when you're starting out, like to be able to get the full weight of the Polkadot validator set against your project, that is a big advantage. And so I would agree with those 2 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oscar?
I think the way I'd sum up the discussion is that shared security should be seen as more than just a technological issue, right? Because at heart, if you want adoption, then you want people to be confident in what they're using. And like I said, we're building so many great things, but the average user is not going to get into the guts of smart contracts, of digital identity, of shared security, of Polkadot's architecture. But what they see are headlines right now, unfortunately, where you can have an $80 billion project essentially go to zero value in 48 hours. I've had to explain to friends, yes, there was a hack of an NFT gaming system, and the hack was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Ultimately, this is what people remember, and people, I think, are beginning to distinguish that not all blockchains are built alike. And ultimately, you have to get people confident that if you use something like Polkadot, and again, people are being able to tell the difference, you can be assured of security without having to understand what's going on under the hood. Most people won't look. As Ingo and Derek said, ideally, we've succeeded when it's invisible to the ordinary user. And what Ingo said is very important. You can have a new parachain, you can have a project starting out, you can have an ecosystem that's just getting built, attracting users, just getting traction. But even at that key inception stage, it already benefits from the shared security of one of the largest layer ones on the planet. And that's a very important distinguishing thing. And as things scale and things are getting stress tested, people are noticing the difference.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's an important point and one of the major things that Polkadot solves, among many other things. We're actually at the end of our panel, but we allowed for some time for questions from the audience. If anyone has, you, Cecile in the back, she'll be walking around with the microphone, and everyone get your questions ready.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks. Hi guys, my name is Sagar. So my question to you, or maybe three of all of you can answer. So basically, we are talking about like multi-chain future, right? But we know that I'm in crypto since long time. So, but we know that we hate each other, right? In terms of like chain layer one protocol. So, what is the Polkadot is doing in terms of like bringing everyone together rather than fighting with other chains, like who is the best one, who is not the best one, who is the bad, and so on. And also, I think what you guys are doing in terms of like educating the people.
Derek
Derek
is
should take
personally
the first
bringing
one.
everyone together. So over to you.
I'll answer that. I think it has to do with some of the same themes and points that we talked about earlier, in that it's this mental model, right? So when your mental model is, I'm going to pick one blockchain, I'm going to deploy my software into that blockchain, I'm going to be a community member of that blockchain, and that's it. That tends towards this tribalistic thinking. When your thinking is, I might need 6 or 7 blockchains to be successful. I'm going to have my application deployed across many blockchains. I need to, have kind of trade agreements, let's call them, with these other 12 blockchains. I think the thinking changes then, right? I mean, these other chains become partners, right? And people that you're in some kind of path toward shared success with. So I think that's maybe easier said than done, but one of the prerequisites for changing that thinking is to have the right technical architecture that allows for that kind of interaction to happen. And so that's something that I see as being in place here. And certainly there's a lot of collaboration among the teams within Polkadot, but we want to also have, and certainly at Moonbeam, an outward-facing mindset. A lot of the use cases that people are deploying on Moonbeam are use cases that span many chains that are outside of the Polkadot ecosystem as well.
Oscar?
Okay, short answer is that when everyone plugs into Moonbeam, we're going to have world peace. Right? No, long answer, look, again, technology is only step one. And ultimately, technology is built by people, adoption is driven by people. So I can personally attest, walking up and down the promenade here in Davos, I walked into the pavilions of all the other projects, and no one said, hey, I hate you, you're Polkadot, you're not welcome here, you can't have any of our free food. Right? So I think we're all in this together. Everyone accepts it's a multi-chain world. It's not going to be winner take all. There's a lot of room for multiple layer ones to succeed. There's a lot of room for multiple ecosystems to thrive together. There's no monopoly on talent. And maybe if you want statistics, the quantitative way of looking at it is that you think we're so big. Polkadot, amazing, one of the 10 largest crypto projects on the planet. But compare the size of Web3 to Web2, right? Maybe when Polkadot flips Amazon, Google, Meta, and national economies, then we can talk, right? We can say, yeah, we hate everyone and we'll rule the world, right? But it's still early days. It's still small, so there's room for everyone.
Ingo, do you have?
No, I think I've...
Oh, really quick, before we take the next question, another point just to add on is even though there is Polkadot and there are chains that are built on top of Polkadot, we also have bridges, right? And so we bridge to Ethereum, a project called Snowfork is doing that. We bridge to Bitcoin, a project called Kintsugi on Kusama, which is Interlay on Polkadot, is doing that as well. And so we tap into each other's ecosystems. And when you think of even things like NFTs and metaverses, artists are on both platforms, and with XCM, you can actually transfer NFTs among different networks. And while we're just getting started with like unlocking the full potential there, it really is just to bring home this whole point that it's not one chain against them all, but Polkadot's model of interoperability and multi-chain and bridges is really this: let's work together, let's tap into other ecosystems, NFTs on Ethereum can be on Polkadot with XCM and so forth. And next question.
I'm Danny O'Brien. I'm with the Filecoin Foundation, and I'm really appreciating this cross-blockchain free food distribution protocol.
Yeah.
Danny fed me last night.
Yeah, we were all there last night. Actually, we were on together.
Thank you, Filecoin.
Well, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying this panel, and I mean, we definitely see this as part of the future, as being able to work together with different blockchains. I have like a little worry in the back of my mind as we build for that, though, which is that for all the advantages in resilience and flexibility, having these multiple blockchains, there are two areas that unless we pay attention to them, can be a problem. One is each blockchain, the number of validators it has on it, right? Like we need lots of validators to have a resilient blockchain. And the more blockchains we have, maybe people are having to choose between which ones they validate. And the second thing is bridges, right? We don't want bridges to be these single points of failure or centralization in this viewpoint. So I wondered if the panel had any thoughts about how we can incentivize people to run more than one validator or encourage validators to grow in each of these blockchains, and how to make bridges safer too.
That's Ingo.
So I know a couple of companies which run lots of validators of different systems. So I think they are encouraged already. So it seems that works fine. Because if you have some kind of, if you have a data center, that's fine. You probably don't need even a data center. If you have the knowledge of running a Filecoin validator, you can definitely also run a Polkadot validator, why shouldn't you? And so if you have the people out there, just give them the work and they will just do that. I think that's what I see in the ecosystem here is here and there some really great companies, small companies, basically 2-3 people, which are going totally across the ecosystems and make a lot of validation things, because it seems to be a future business and a very nice business model. Yeah, bridges, I think the solution that you have bridges as an inherent part which is validated by another blockchain, this is not the, this is a very good idea to actually start this off. But actually, I also want to say something else, because this is, we're always talking about cross-chain thingies. Look at the dApps. I see very, very small amount of dApps out there using different ecosystems. This is actually also a possibility to tap from one thing into another, right? So why wouldn't we? So also the dApp developers. So you don't need a bridge for everything, right? You don't need to bridge on the blockchain level for everything. If you want to send a transaction from A to B, yes, that's true. But if you are just making an RPC call and looking at the blockchain, you can do that in many blockchains. And so to actually get also started with multi-chain ecosystems out there, I think it's also the dApp developers which we have to call on to do things there as well.
I can chime in maybe on that on this point too. I do have some points of view on this. That I'll tackle the connectivity, the interoperability part of your question. I do think there's going to be a consolidation around certain clusters of connectivity, like as things move forward. So one of them, obviously, big believers in XCM and Polkadot. There'll be one cluster of chains that is interacting with the XCM, but that's not going to be the only one. I'm quite confident that also the Cosmos ecosystem and its IBC-based connections will be another kind of cluster of connected chains that have this rich connectivity. And then, for all the rest, the challenge is that they're all so different, right? So, our bet that we made was around using the EVM tech stack and the EVM technology as like a key. We're using it for interoperability essentially, right? Because that's like the easiest way to plug in to existing bridging technology. I'm a pretty big believer these days in these newer general message passing systems that are coming to market that are trying to bridge, especially across EVM chains, being able to do remote contract calls and other things. And so that's kind of my bet is that there's, I kind of have this idea that there's going to be an increasing number of blockchains, but consolidation around a smaller set of tech stacks, because developers can't keep in mind 12 different tech stacks, right? So in my mind, that's the substrate, Polkadot's technology, Cosmos SDK, EVM. I mean, these are three that I'm quite confident are going to be here for some foreseeable future.
Excellent. Oscar, anything you want to add?
They put it well.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions from the audience? Don't be shy. There's a lot. All right. If not, I think we'll end it here. I want to thank our panelists for joining us today. This was so great to have you guys here with us. You guys are obviously very busy people, so we appreciate it. And thank you all for also coming into the Polkadot place here. Yeah, we need to.
By the end of the day, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah,
Try not to Twitter poll.
Wonderful. Over to you,
Yeah,
Peter.
thank you all. For those of you who are registered for the next session, feel free to stick around. If you haven't registered for the next session, I'm sure there's a couple more spots. Otherwise, we're going to reset the stage and have more folks coming in for Derek's talk, which I'm very excited. You Don't Own Me. It's a pretty snappy title. But yeah, thank you very much, and we'll be back with the next talk in about 10 minutes.
Ask her to stick around. I'll take the speaker selfie with the audience.
For sure,
For
yeah.
my
If you
marketing
want
guy.
to grab some selfies on the other side, if you all haven't seen the Experience Education Center on the other side of the venue, definitely check that out. A lot of cool interactive modules to engage with. So thanks a lot, and we'll be back on in about 10 minutes.
Thank you.